John moved with steady steps through the blown-out streets. His boots crunched over broken glass and charred metal. The air was thick with smoke and dust. Distant gunfire echoed off ruined walls. He held his rifle close, his eyes scanning every shadow for danger. The sky above was gray, streaked with the black smoke of burning vehicles. Every so often he paused to catch his breath, the weight of his gear pressing on his shoulders. He had seen many battles, but this one felt different. The enemy was merciless, driving the locals from their homes. John remembered his training: stay focused, protect your team, and complete the mission. He moved through the rubble, following the path marked out by drones. Each footstep took him closer to the heart of the fighting dot. As he rounded a collapsed wall, he heard a faint sound. It was a soft, broken cry. He froze. Around him, the soldiers pushed forward, but he stayed still. He listened again. The noise came from under a pile of debris. A child's cry, weak and trembling. John knelt and peered into the shadows. The child was small and pale, with large eyes that looked more curious than afraid. Her skin had a faint blue tint. Her clothes were simple and torn in places. She lay on her side, her breathing shallow. She held one arm pressed against her chest, as if it hurt to move. He glanced around. His squad had moved on. He could call for a medic, but the only ones in range were busy with other wounded. John knew he could not leave her behind. He moved closer and gently brushed the rubble off her body. The child flinched but did not cry out. John spoke softly. His voice was calm, even though his heart pounded. "You are safe now," he said, using a gentle tone that he rarely used in battle. He placed his hand lightly on her back. She turned her head and blinked at him. Her eyes were wide and filled with fear. John noticed a small cut on her forehead and a bruise forming on her cheek. He tore a strip of cloth from his own uniform and wrapped it around her arm. She watched him without speaking. Her lips quivered, but no words came out. John's training told him to be swift, but he took his time tying the makeshift bandage. Knowing it would help more than a quick fix, farther down the street, a mortar shell hit a building and sent dust into the air. John stood and gently lifted the child to his chest. Her small body was light. She wrapped her arms around his neck. John tightened his hold, cradling her like a parent would a young child. He checked his surroundings. The line of soldiers had advanced beyond a safe distance. He could try to catch up, but carrying the child would slow him. Yet he could not leave her. He pulled out his radio and called for support. His voice was calm but firm. "This is Alpha 4. I have a civilian child in need of evacuation. She is injured and alone. Requesting immediate medevac at grid reference 6732. He paused and listened. The response came faintly through. Static. The medic team was tied up, but they promised to send help as soon as they could. John lowered the radio. He scanned the street. The buildings around him were broken shells of their former selves. Vehicles lay overturned and burning. He took a deep breath and steadied himself. He set off, moving carefully to avoid open areas. The child pressed her face against his uniform, seeking the smallest bit of comfort. They moved slowly. John stayed close to the walls, stepping over rubble. He kept one eye on the sky, watching for enemy drones or snipers. The child's breathing was shallow but steady. He talked to her in a low voice. "My name is John. What is yours?" he asked softly. She blinked and said nothing. John knew that she might not speak his language. He smiled gently and continued, "We will get help soon. You are safe with me." The street ended in a wide intersection. In the center was a crashed transport ship. Its metal hull was torn open, smoke billowing from inside. John recognized it as one of their supply ships. He led the way toward a side entrance. The impact had left a gap large enough for them to pass through. Inside the ship was dark and hot. The walls were scorched. John kept the child close and activated his flashlight. The beam cut through the smoke, revealing crates of supplies and medical kits. He searched quickly and found a first aid bag. He knelt and opened it. Gauze, antiseptic wipes, and bandages spilled out. He took out antiseptic wipes and cleaned the Child's forehead wound. She watched him, her eyes curious and trusting. He bound the cut with a clean bandage. Then he took a sip of his water bottle and offered it to her. She hesitated, then drank. John smiled and placed the cap back on the bottle. Outside, the sound of distant artillery shells grew louder. John knew he had to move again. He slung the first aid bag over his shoulder, hoisted the child back into his arms, and made his way out of the ship. He pressed himself against the wall and peered around the corner. A squad of friendly soldiers passed by, heading deeper into enemy territory. John called out to them. Medic support is coming, but we need to clear this area. Keep an eye out for hostiles and cover my retreat. His squad leader, a woman named Lily, saw him and nodded. She raised her hand in a quick salute. John nodded back and set off again, cradling the child. With the soldiers providing cover, John moved through the broken city. Each step brought fresh memories of battles past, but this child changed everything. He thought of his own sister, who was the same age. He thought of the parents he had lost on earlier missions. He felt a fierce urge to protect this small alien. As John and the soldiers moved toward the extraction point, the child remained calm in his arms. She leaned against his chest and closed her eyes. John could feel her small heart beating. He whispered again, I am here, sweet one. You are safe. Behind him, the soldiers covered their progress. The sky grew darker as smoke hung low. But John focused on the child's face. Her eyes fluttered open and she looked up at him. For a moment, fear was replaced by trust. John knew that no matter what happened, he would carry her to safety. He took a deep breath and marched forward, determined to see her rescued. The battlefield was still dangerous, but John felt hope for the first time in months. He would protect this child, even if it cost him everything. Part 2. John crouched behind a broken wall as the medevac team arrived. The helicopter's rotors thudded overhead, stirring dust into the air. He held the alien child tightly, her small hands clutching his uniform. Lily and the other soldiers cleared a path. They moved carefully, aware that enemy snipers might be watching. A medic named Sarah ran forward. She knelt beside John and took the child from his arms. She guided the girl gently onto a stretcher. The child looked up at John with wide eyes. Sarah smiled and covered her with a light blanket. John stood with Lily as Sarah examined the child. There was a deep cut on her arm and bruises forming on her ribs. Sarah cleaned the wounds and applied fresh bandages. John watched closely. He felt a wave of relief as Sarah worked with skill and care. Outside the medevac zone, John shared a cigarette with Lily. Smoke curled in the cold air. Lily glanced at him. Her face was tired but relieved. She is stable for now, Lily said softly. John nodded. He flicked ash from his cigarette. I have never held anyone so small in such danger. She seemed so brave. Lily looked at him with understanding. You saved her life, John. She owes you everything. John dropped the cigarette to the ground and stamped it out. I owe her peace of mind. I want her to see her home again. Lily placed a hand on his shoulder. We will do everything we can. But the High Command will need to decide if she can stay with us. They will see her as alien technology or a threat. John clenched his fists. But she is a child, Lily. She never asked for this war. Lily did not answer. She only nodded and turned away. John followed her steps as they walked toward the command tent. Inside the tent, Officer Maya reviewed reports. She looked up when John and Lily entered. John reported the rescue and the child's condition. Maya's eyes were cold. Soldier John, you took a risk beyond your orders, Maya said. John squared his shoulders. I did what any soldier would do for an innocent life, Maya sighed. She tapped her finger on the table. The brass is worried about alien life forms. They see her as an unknown risk. They order that the child be examined by our science unit. Until then, she will remain under guard. John felt anger rise. He looked at Maya. Guard how? You will keep a scared child locked away? Maya raised a hand for calm. We must follow protocol. Once they confirm she poses no danger, she can go to a safe zone. Until then, I have no choice. John gritted his teeth but nodded. He turned and left the tent. Lily fell in step beside him. I know how you feel, she said. John shook his head. I should stay with her. Lily studied him. There is nothing to stop you. No orders forbid you from volunteering. John paused. He looked back at the medevac landing zone. The helicopter had moved on. Sarah and another medic carried the stretcher to a guarded area. John thought of the child's face, her eyes full of fear. He made a choice. I will request assignment to guard duty at the holding facility. I will not leave until she is safe. Lily placed her hand on his arm. Be careful what you wish for. The science unit is not known for kind treatment. They see aliens as subjects. John nodded. I know. I will watch over her. Lily stepped close and lowered her voice. You have guts, John. Just remember why you are doing this. He met her gaze. I remember. John marched to the command tent again. Inside, Officer Maya glanced at him with surprise. Soldier John, you are volunteering? John saluted. Yes, ma'am. I ask permission to remain with the child until she is safe. Maya studied him. She tapped a pen on the desk. This is irregular, but your record is good. I will approve it on a temporary basis. You will be under the authority of the science unit. Do not interfere with their work. John nodded. I understand. Maya handed him an order. Report to Scientist Dr. Evans at once. He will assign your post. John left the tent and found Dr. Evans in a nearby makeshift lab. The lab was set up in a ruined building. Inside were strange machines humming softly. Evans, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, looked up from a datapad. Soldier John, you say you want to guard the alien child? Evans asked, his voice neutral. John handed over the order. Yes, sir, I want to make sure she is safe. Evans scanned the paper and tapped his chin. Fine, but know this, I will conduct tests. Blood samples, scans, behavioral studies. You are not to influence the results. You will stand by and observe. John nodded. I will follow orders, but I will not abandon her. Evans gave a thin smile. We will see, soldier. Now report to the holding cell. John followed Evans down a hall, lined with metal doors. Each door had a small window. Evans stopped at the last door. This is her cell. I have instructed the guards to treat her humanely. I trust you will intervene if there is any mistreatment. John looked at the small window. Inside, the child sat on a cot, her arms wrapped around her knees. She looked up at John when she saw him. Evans unlocked the door and motioned John inside. John stepped in and knelt beside the child. He spoke softly. Hey there, it's John. I'm here to stay with you for a while. You will see me every day. The child blinked. She did not speak. John smiled and took out a small packet of dried fruit from his pocket. He offered it to her. She looked at it and then slowly reached for it. She ate one piece and then another. John watched her and felt a swell of relief. Good job, he said. I brought more if you like. The guards stood at the door, watching silently. John cleared his throat. May I get you anything else? Water? A blanket? She shook her head. John looked at her bruised arm. In a bit, I will clean this again. We must keep it neat so you heal faster. She looked up and pressed her lips together. John nodded. He stood and turned to the guards. Thank you for letting me stay here. I will not give the child any trouble. One guard nodded. The other looked uncertain. John offered a nod to both and stepped back. After he left, John stood outside the cell. He took a deep breath and studied the building. The lab was quiet now. Occasional beeps and hums came from inside. He wondered what Evans would do next. As John walked away, he thought of the child's eyes. She trusted him. He had to earn that trust every day. He found Lily waiting outside. She handed him a fresh bottle of water. How is she? Lily asked. John took the bottle. She ate. She seems to like dried fruit. I will help the guards with her care. But I had to promise Evans I would not interfere with his tests. Lily frowned. Just watch over her. Make sure they don't treat her like a lab rat. John nodded slowly. I will. Lily touched his arm. You are a good friend, John. John looked at her. I only do what is right. They walked back toward the living quarters. The sky was turning orange as the sun set. John thought of the battlefield he had come from. The noise had faded now. This place felt strange and uneasy. But he had a purpose here. He entered the quarters and saw other soldiers resting. He greeted them quietly and set his gear down. He unpacked a small photo from his pocket. It was of his sister at her school recital. He smiled and placed it on the table. Lily followed him inside. She pointed to the photo. You miss her, John nodded. I do. Sometimes I wonder if I will see home again. Lily sat beside him. You will. And then you can tell your sister about the brave child you saved. John closed his eyes and thought of the alien child. He wondered if he would ever learn her name. He wondered if she would ever smile without fear. He placed the photo and his rifle side by side. Then he lay down on his cot and closed his eyes. Ready for the next day's challenge. As night fell, John dreamed of the battlefield, but he also dreamed of the child's face, free from pain. He would protect her no matter the cost. John woke before dawn. The sky was still dark, and a cold breeze moved through the camp. He dressed quickly, checking his uniform and gear. Today he would spend the morning with the alien child. He packed extra water and dried fruit for her. He left his cot and walked toward the lab building. Guards stood at the door. They nodded when they saw him. John entered the cell and found the child awake on her cot. She looked at him with wide eyes. John smiled softly and held out the fruit. Good morning, he said. I brought breakfast. The child reached for the fruit. She ate slowly, tasting each piece. John sat on a stool nearby and watched her. He placed the water bottle within her reach. She drank and then looked at him. He patted her shoulder. Today I will stay with you. All morning, he said. You are safe here. She did not speak but nodded. John studied her pale blue skin and large eyes. He wondered about her home planet. Did she have friends? A family? He wanted to help her remember better times. Suddenly, Dr. Evans arrived at the cell. He held a device with blinking lights. He looked at John. Time for more tests, Evans said. John stood. May I stay? Evans glanced at him. You may observe, but do not interfere. John nodded. Evans opened the door and led the child into a small examination room. John followed. Inside, the lights were bright and harsh. Machines lined one wall. Evans motioned for the child to sit on a table. Do not worry, Evans said. We only need to scan you. John watched as Evans placed sensors on the child. She hissed and tried to pull away. John stepped forward. It will be okay, he said softly. He took her hand and held it. Evans frowned. Soldier, please step back. John hesitated. She is afraid. She needs comfort. Evans turned to John. This is not your concern. Now please step aside. John looked at the child's tearful eyes. He remembered the moment he rescued her. He thought of his own sister's fear at her first medical checkup. He made a decision. He gently removed the sensors. The child whimpered. John picked her up and held her close. You are safe with me, he whispered. Evans shouted. Stop! You are interfering! John backed out of the room, holding the child. He turned to Evans. I will not let you scare her further. She needs kindness, not machines. Evans stared at him. Then he sighed. Very well, I will postpone the tests. But this is your responsibility now. John held the child tightly. She nestled against his chest. He walked out of the lab, ignoring the guards' shocked looks. He brought the child back to her cell. Lily waited outside. She saw John and the child. Her eyes widened. What happened? She asked. John knelt and set the child on the cot. Evans wanted to scan her again. She was scared. I stopped it. Lily frowned. The brass will not like this? John shook his head. I cannot let them treat her like an experiment. She is a child. Lily sighed but nodded. We will face that later. Right now she needs comfort. John sat beside the child. He picked up a cloth and cleaned her cheek. She closed her eyes and leaned into him. He told her a story about home, about green fields and blue skies. She listened quietly. Later, John left a note for Evans. All further tests must wait until the child is calm. He posted it at the lab door. The sun climbed higher. John took the child to the courtyard. The camp had a small patch of dusty ground. He spread his coat on the ground and placed the child on it. She looked around with curiosity. "Today we will practice walking," John said. "You must learn to trust the ground again." He held her hand and helped her stand. She wobbled, then regained balance. She giggled softly. John smiled. He helped her walk. They moved slowly, step by step. Guards watched at a distance. John kept his voice calm. "Good job, you're strong." She looked up at him and smiled. It was the first real smile he had seen. John felt a warmth in his chest. For an hour, they practiced walking and stepping over small rocks. The child gained confidence. John brought out a small ball from his bag. He rolled it gently toward her. She looked at it, then pushed it back. They played together quietly. Near the end of the session, Lily brought them water and fruit. The child sat between John and Lily. She ate and drank. John watched her peaceful face. As the afternoon approached, drills began in the camp. Soldiers ran past, shouting orders. John held the child close. "Don't worry," he said. "I will protect you." She rested her head on his shoulder. John kissed her head. He looked at Lily. "Thank you for being here," Lily nodded. "We will make a case. We can show the brass how she is healing. Maybe they will let her go to a real safe zone." John squeezed her hand. "That would be good." That evening, John returned the child to her cell. He tucked her into her cot and covered her with the blanket. She reached for him and he knelt beside her. "Sleep well," he said. She closed her eyes and drifted off. John stood and straightened his uniform. He thought of the trials ahead. He would face the brass, face Evans, face any order. But he would protect this child. He left the cell and walked toward the tents. The sky glowed with the last light of day. John felt a mix of hope and fear. He did not know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew what he must do. He would stand guard. He would face tests, he would keep her safe, and he would never let an innocent child suffer alone. Today he had seen her smile. That was worth any risk. John walked through the courtyard with the alien child safe in his arms. The late morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty ground. Guards watched from posts as John made his way toward the far side of the camp. Dr. Evans had given permission for the child to move under John's guard. John felt a mix of pride and anxiety. He knew that the camp held both friend and foe. A sudden alarm blared. Red lights flashed along the walls. Soldiers shouted. John hurried toward the commotion. Lily met him at the entrance to the lab building. "What's happening?" John asked. Lily looked grim. "A hostile squad breached our perimeter on the west side. They are moving in fast. We have to keep the child safe." John tightened his grip on the girl. Her small body trembled. He tucked her against his chest. "Take cover," he said. He looked for shelter. A half-ruined vehicle lay nearby. John moved behind it and ducked down. Lily followed with 2 guards. The child clung to John's shirt, her eyes wide. From the other side of the courtyard, a squad of enemy soldiers advanced. Their uniforms were dark and their weapons raised. John recognized the emblem on their helmets. They were the raiders who had attacked the planet's villages. John quietly spoke to the child. "Stay close to me. Do not make a sound." She pressed her face into his chest. John felt her small heartbeat against his own. He scanned the enemy formation. Their leader stood in front, a tall man with a scar across his cheek. He wore a dark coat and looked ruthless. Lily whispered, "We cannot outrun them. They will spot us." John nodded. He raised his hand. Lily and the guards held their fire. John stepped from behind the vehicle, clutching the child. He walked forward, his eyes on the enemy commander. The raiders hesitated. When they saw him, the commander frowned. "Soldier of the human forces, what is that you carry?" the commander called out. His voice was harsh. John kept his voice calm. "This is an unarmed child. She is injured and innocent. I'm taking her to safety." The commander narrowed his eyes. "An alien child? This changes things." John held the child higher so the commander could see her face. She peeked out, her pale skin and large eyes shining. "She needs help, not war." John said. The commander glanced at his squad. The raiders lowered their weapons slightly. Whispers passed among them. John saw the girl's lip quiver. He spoke softly. This child did not choose this war. She only wants to live. The commander studied John. He then looked at the child. For a moment, no one spoke. Lily stepped forward. We will not harm you if you let us pass. This child's life is more important than any battle. The commander laughed bitterly. Your compassion is a weakness. This is war, human. There is no room for mercy. John felt anger rise in his chest. He met the commander's gaze. Mercy is what makes us human. Will you kill a child for victory? The commander's hand hovered over his weapon. He glanced at his squad, who shifted uncomfortably. One of the raiders, a younger soldier, lowered his rifle. The commander barked. Stop, Ryan. Stand down. Ryan froze. The commander turned back to John. Human soldier, I admire your courage. But I cannot let you take this child. She belongs to our people. John swallowed hard. He kept his voice steady. She has no home left. Both our sides destroyed her world. She has no people now. The commander hesitated. He looked at John, then at the child. John held the child's hand. Look at her eyes, John said softly. Do they hold hate? No, she only holds hope. The commander studied the girl. Then he sighed and lowered his weapon. Very well, he said. I will let you pass, but know this, I owe you a debt. If our paths cross again, I will hold you to it. John nodded. Thank you. The commander raised his hand in a curt wave. Go, before I change my mind. John turned and walked quickly toward the camp gate. Lily and the guards followed. The child pressed closer to John, her small hand gripping his uniform. When they reached the gate, John paused and looked back. The commander stood amid his squad, watching. John saluted him. Go in peace, John called. The commander inclined his head and turned away. John exhaled deeply and continued through the gate. The camp gate closed behind them. John led the child to the safe zone. The guards on duty stepped aside, recognizing him. Dr. Evans emerged. I heard what happened, Evans said. His tone was neutral. John set the child down on a cot in the secure area. She rubbed her eyes and looked around. Evans studied John. You risked everything. John shook his head. I did what I had to do. Evans tapped his clipboard. The brass will hear of this. You may have just changed their minds about her. John looked at the child. She reached out and touched his hand. He sat on the cot beside her. You are safe now, he said. She looked at him and quietly said, Thank you. John felt a lump in his throat. He smiled softly. Lily arrived with Sarah, the medic. Sarah knelt and checked the girl's wounds. They were healing well. She will walk soon, Sarah said. John nodded. He looked at the child. We will help you heal. Then we will find your home, if any remains. The girl closed her eyes. John stroked her hair. He thought of the battle and how hate could turn into mercy. He realized that one child could show the best of two worlds. After the medic left, John and Lily stepped outside. The camp was quiet once more. Soldiers repaired the walls and cleared debris. Lily put a hand on John's shoulder. You did good today, John shrugged. I only did what felt right, Lily smiled. In this world, right is often hard to find. You found it today. John looked at the setting sun. The sky was painted in shades of red and orange. He thought of the commander's promise. He wondered if peace could grow from a single act of mercy. As night fell, John returned to the child's quarters. He found her awake, drawing shapes in the dirt with a stick. He sat beside her. What are you drawing? She pointed to the lines. Home, John studied the pattern. It looked like hills and rivers. Will you tell me about it? He asked. She nodded. John listened as she spoke in her own language. He did not understand the words, but he saw the light in her eyes. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. They watched the stars emerge. John thought of his sister back home and of the miles between worlds. He vowed to protect this child until she could find her way. And maybe one day, both their worlds would learn from her example. He settled down on the cot beside her until she fell asleep. John stood and quietly left the room. He paused at the door and looked back at her peaceful face. He whispered to himself, "Good night, sweet one. Tomorrow is another day." John arrived at the lab early. The sky was pale gray. He carried a small bag of fresh food and a warm blanket. Inside the lab, Dr. Evans waited with folded arms. Evans spoke without greeting. "We must decide the child's fate today." The brass. "We'll meet at noon? I need your report?" John nodded. He set the food and blanket on a table. The child sat on her cot, watching them. "I will speak first," John said. He turned to Evans. "This child is gentle and brave. She trusts us now. She has no ill will toward humans." Evans tapped his clipboard. "Feelings do not matter. Policy states all alien life must be studied before release. She may carry unknown threats." John squared his shoulders. "I understand caution. But she is a child. Treat her as you would a human child." "Tests have shown no harmful agents," Evans sighed. "Ship logs show her species carries a virus our medics cannot identify. Protocol requires quarantine for 30 days. John's heart sank. He looked at the child. She smiled weakly. 30 days is too long," John said. "She will suffer. She needs a home." Evan's voice turned cold. "Orders are orders. I will inform the brass." Before John could speak, the lab doors opened. Officer Maya and several high-ranking officers entered. John saluted. Maya returned a brief nod. Maya spoke to Evans. "Your report?" Evans read from his notes. "The child shows no aggression. Healing is normal, however. Her species may carry an unknown biohazard. Policy requires 30-day isolation." Maya turned to John. "Soldier John, you requested time to speak." John stepped forward, careful and calm. He looked at the assembled officers. "Ma'am, this child has been through horrors. She is alone and afraid. She trusts us. I have guarded her every moment. I can testify she is harmless. I ask that you show mercy. Allow her to go to a shelter for refugees." "She does not need a lab cell," an officer whispered to Maya. She nodded and faced John. "Your compassion is admirable," Maya said. "But we cannot ignore protocol." John glanced at the child. Tears shone in her eyes. Nearby, Lily watched with concern. John raised his voice. "With respect, protocol is meant to protect. But mercy is meant to guide. This child is a living being, not a sample. I propose a compromise. We reduce her isolation to a week. After that, she can move to a guarded refugee habitat." Murmurs passed among the officers. Evans frowned. Maya tapped her pen. "A week is far below policy," Maya said. "But your record and testimony carry weight." John held his breath. Maya looked at the child. "How do you feel, child?" John knelt beside her. He spoke softly in her language. She nodded and looked at the officers. Then she said a few words in her tongue. Though John did not understand, her tone was clear. "Hope." Maya smiled faintly. "Very well. 1 week of quarantine under Soldier John's care. After that, you may enter the refugee habitat." John exhaled in relief. He saluted. "Thank you, ma'am." Maya nodded. "But Soldier, any breach of security and this agreement is void." John met her gaze. Understood. After the meeting, John returned to the child's cell. He unlocked the door and entered. She stood and wrapped her arms around him. He picked her up and carried her to the blanket. He spread it on the floor and set her down. She looked at him and smiled. "We have 7 days," John said gently. She nodded and hugged his leg. Lily brought them fresh clothes and small toys. They arranged them on the blanket. "We will make this week the best you have ever had," John said. Over the next days, John stayed by her side. They practiced walking and playing games. He taught her simple words in their language. She taught him shapes and music from her world. They laughed together. Guards and medics watched respectfully. Dr. Evans observed quietly but allowed John's methods. One evening, John carried the child onto the roof of the lab building. The city lights glowed. He pointed to distant stars. "Those stars are where your home might be," he said. She looked and nodded, her eyes reflecting the lights. John sang a lullaby in his soft voice. She fell asleep in his arms. Day 7 arrived. At dawn, John dressed the child in clean clothes. He held her hand and walked to the camp gate. Soldiers lined the path. They watched quietly as John led her forward. Officer Maya waited at the gate. She stepped forward and looked at the child. "You are free to go?" Maya said. The child looked at John. He winked. She turned and walked through the gate, hand in hand with Lily, heading to the refugee habitat beyond. John watched until she disappeared from sight. Behind him, Maya approached. "Soldier John," she said quietly. John turned. "Yes, ma'am." Maya offered a small envelope. "This was delivered to you." John opened it. Inside was a Medal of Honor, along with a letter praising his courage and compassion. He looked at Maya in surprise. "You earned this by saving a life and showing mercy," Maya said. John shook his head. "I only did what was right," Maya smiled. "Sometimes there's enough." She turned and walked away. John tucked the medal into his pocket. He looked at the sunrise. A new day had begun. He thought of the child's smile and of the world they both shared. He set off back to the lab, ready to face whatever came next, carrying hope in his heart. The camp was quiet at dawn. Birds called in the distant trees beyond the walls. John rose early and put on his uniform. He fastened the medal Maya had given him onto his chest pocket. He felt its weight and knew it was more than metal. It was a promise. He made his way to the lab building. Guards stood at the door. When they saw his medal, they saluted. John nodded in return and entered. Dr. Evans was waiting beside a large window that looked out over the refugee habitat. The place was alive with activity. Children, both human and alien, played together. Families from both worlds shared meals. Evans glanced at John and offered a curt nod. "It appears your protégé is doing well," John smiled. "She is happy." "And not just her. Many others are happier now, too." Evans looked out at the scene. He seemed thoughtful. "I did not expect this." "Your actions had a ripple effect." John stepped beside him. "Everyone learned from her story. They saw mercy as stronger than fear." Evans nodded slowly. "You saved more than a child. You saved hope." John turned. "Thank you, Doctor, for letting me care for her." Evans tucked his hands behind his back. "You taught me a lesson, too. Sometimes science needs the heart to guide it." John nodded. He placed a hand on Evans's shoulder. "We both did our part." A loud cheer came from outside. They turned to see soldiers and refugees together, waving. In the center was the alien child, older now and taller. She held a small banner that read in both human and alien script, "Peace grows here." John felt tears sting his eyes. He watched as she led a group of children in a song. The melody was simple and sweet. It echoed in the morning air. Evans whispered, "Join them." John stepped outside. Guards parted to let him through. The child saw him and ran into his arms. She hugged him tightly. "You are here," she said in broken human words. John lifted her onto his shoulders. "I promised I would never leave you." She laughed and played at his hair. Lily joined them with a basket of fruit. "We have breakfast for everyone." John and the child walked with Lily to long tables under a canopy of trees. Humans and aliens sat together. Some soldiers ate next to refugees. Others simply watched, smiling. John sat at a table near the child. He looked around and saw faces full of hope for the first time on this planet. He thought of the battles he had fought. They felt distant now. Lily poured juice into cups. She offered one to John. He drank and tasted sweet fruit from both worlds. "You made this possible," she said. John shook his head. "We all made it possible." The child's mother, a tall alien woman with gentle features, approached. She knelt and spoke to her daughter in their language. The daughter nodded and then hugged John again. John bowed respectfully to the mother. Though he did not know her language, he hoped she understood his gratitude. The mother placed a small pouch in his hand. John opened it and found seeds strange. Seeds that glowed faintly. She smiled and spoke softly. John understood one word: grow. John looked back at the garden near the tables. It was empty. He nodded. He stood and announced in a clear voice, "Today we plant seeds of hope. Please help me." Humans and aliens rose from their seats. Together they moved to the garden. The child skipped beside John, carrying the pouch of seeds. Soldiers and refugees dug small holes and planted the seeds. Laughter and chatter filled the air. John knelt and placed seeds in the soil. He covered them gently and patted the earth. Lily knelt beside him. "What will they be?" John smiled. "I do not know, but they will remind us of today." As the sun climbed higher, the garden filled with people planting seeds. The child stood on a small rock and threw seeds into the air. They fell like stars onto the soil. John watched her and thought of how fear had given way to trust. He thought of the commander who let them pass, the brass who showed mercy, and Dr. Evans who learned from the heart. When the garden was full, John and the child stood together. They looked at the planted seeds. "They need care," John said. She nodded. Together they watered the plants with cups of water. Afterward, everyone returned to the tables. John sat beside the child and her mother. They shared a meal of bread and fruit, passed between worlds. John felt a gentle hand on his. He looked at Evans and Maya standing together. They nodded to him. John raised his cup in a silent toast. The others joined him. He drank and felt warmth spread through him. That evening, John and Lily walked back to the camp entrance. Lanterns lit the path. Guards and refugees mingled. Lily glanced at him. "What will you do now?" John paused. He looked at the stars overhead. "I will stay until peace is real, then I will go home." Lily smiled. "Your sister will be proud." John nodded. "I hope she understands why I stayed." Lily took his arm. "You showed the world why she should be proud." John squeezed her hand. They walked toward the lab building. Inside, the child waited by the window. She waved when she saw him. John entered and knelt beside her. "Are you ready for bed?" he asked her. She nodded. John helped her change into simple clothes. He tucked her into her cot. She reached out and touched the metal on his chest. "For me?" she asked. John smiled. "For both of us. It belongs to everyone who showed mercy." She closed her eyes and drifted off. John sat beside her and watched her sleep. Then he rose and turned off the light. He walked to the door and paused. He looked back once more at the peaceful child. He whispered, "Good night, sweet one. Tomorrow we grow hope again." John left the room and locked the door. Outside, the camp was quiet, but hope glowed brighter than any lamp. He walked to his cot and closed his eyes, ready to meet the new day.